Hello, everybody. I'm Cleo Heinel. I lead strategy and operations at Alation, and I'll be moderating today's discussion. Thank you so much for joining. I love seeing how everybody is joining from all over the world. Just a quick housekeeping item. You can post in our Q&A at the bottom of your screen, and we will be taking questions at the very end, or you can just chat in the chat, but those may not make it to the Q&A. So thank you. I'm excited to be here today with three distinguished guests. First, we have Stewart Bond from IDC, who will give us an overview of what he sees in the market. Nick Duce from Alation will talk to us about the Alation data maturity model. And then Jade Jones from Sainsbury will walk us through what they're doing at Sainsbury's from a practitioner's perspective. So first, let me turn to Stewart Bond, who is Vice President of IDC's Data Intelligence and Integration Software Service, to give us an overview of the market and how he sees the quantification of data maturity and how he's seen the value of data intelligence being presented. Over to you, Stewart.
Thank you, Cleo. Appreciate that introduction. I've been in the IT industry for over 30 years, and I've spent a lot of time building systems, architecting solutions, and now leveraging data and information in market analysis, trends, identification, and forecasting. Data has always been a part of my career. First, it was about data that applications were creating, processing, and presenting. Now it's about data that comes from surveys, from briefings, from interviews in stock markets. The intelligence about that data is just as critical, if not more critical, to understanding the data itself. And that's what we're going to discuss today. The value of intelligence about data, or what we call data intelligence. We're experiencing a seminal moment in technology, and it's come about through our current era, which was called multiplied innovation. It's defined by cloud mobility and the internet, and enabled through platforms and communities within digital ecosystems. This also triggered a massive data consolidation process and birth of the transformer model architecture, which enabled the creation of foundational artificial intelligence models. We're now entering into a new era of intelligent automation. This new era requires a new platform, but not one based on new silicon or hardware. Rather, it's a new platform that is changing our relationship with data and how we extract value from data. Now, intelligence about data will be critical in the future in assuring appropriate use of data within AI models and support of responsible AI policies and procedures. Intelligence about data is critical today in assuring appropriate and correct use of data in model training, analytics, and operational business processes. So how is our current relationship with data, and are we ready for it to change? Based on our research, we need it to change. I recently spoke to a manufacturing company that said, we don't have a data lake problem, we have a data puddle problem. And here are some stats to introduce or to describe that problem. 82% have not been able to remove data silos. It's because modern data environments are characterized as being highly distributed, diverse, and dynamic. And organizations don't know where their data is, what it means, and how it's flowing through their organization, because over 3/4 say that having intelligence about their data is a problem. 2 out of every 3 organizations lack AI investments to improve data management and usage. And nearly 1/3 of organizations say they still have technical debt in their data environment. Now, the fact that all of these data points came from 5 different surveys tells us that these are common problems that every organization faces. Now, how do organizations solve these problems? Well, a lot of them invest in discrete technologies to try and tackle, which is one of the sources of these problems themselves. But a few organizations do so guided by an enterprise intelligence strategy and start to change their relationship with data. And in order to really build enterprise intelligence, we need an enterprise intelligence architecture. Back in 2021, I started talking about a data control plane, which is used to take control of modern data environments. Now we've now expanded that model into additional planes. We've introduced a data plane below the data control plane that describes the capabilities and technologies that exist in our modern data environments. On top of the data control plane, which the data control plane serves, is the analysis plane, where insights are delivered using analytical models and applications to the right resource at the right time, in context and at scale, serving analytical and operational use cases. Now, a decisioning plane sits on top of that, which really leverages the insights from that data analysis plane to help organizations make decisions, support decisions made by people, and increasingly, those decisions are being automated by machines. Now, as we're discussing data intelligence today, I want to focus in on the data control plane and what is in there. The data control plane has three primary categories of classification of capability. Data intelligence, it all starts with data intelligence. How can you take control of your data if you don't know where it is, what it looks like, what it means, how it's classified, where it came from, or where it's going to? With all the focus on data warehouses and lakes, the first move organizations are making is to move all that data into that central analytical repository. Now, I would argue that the first move that should be made is to collect all the intelligence about the data first, and then decide where and when and if that data needs to move. Data governance. It leverages all that intelligence about the data. It's where the policies are created and implemented. It's where the data is controlled. It's also where data pipelines and data in the pipelines is continuously observed for anomalies and exceptions. And then lastly, data engineering. It's where the pipelines are built for data movement, transformation, replication, virtualization, matching, and cleansing. Now, all of these capabilities together can help organizations take control of those modern data environments. And we know that through the survey data that the importance of these categories are finally being recognized. Here's a list of what organizations placed as their priorities in 2023. The top three are in a different color to draw your attention to them. And hey, look, they're the same three that are in the data control plane. These are critical. These are what organizations are focused on. Now, what's also interesting is that less than 1% of organizations that answered this survey didn't have any of these as initiatives, which means that it's really validating the importance of taking control and data in the modern environment. I'm going to go back a couple of years to some older surveys to make a point about the state of data intelligence. Even though those initiatives are there, or maybe those initiatives are there in part because of what I'm going to show you right now. A couple of years ago, we asked, what do you expect to know about data when making data-driven decisions? Attributes about data intelligence, lineage, quality, business meaning, location, all of those were at the top of the list of what people expect to know. We did a survey a year later. We asked, what is your organization good at doing? What's interesting is that everything at the top of the list on the left is at the bottom of the list on the right. The other problem is that what's at the bottom of the list on the left is at the top of the list on the right. Now, security is important. Don't get me wrong here. It's really important. And many IDC surveys that we run tell us that. But at what cost? Is it getting in the way of innovation? Organizations really need to be able to balance security and innovation while also being compliant. Now that we've looked at data intelligence, what informs data governance, policies, and controls, let's have a look at data engineering. Is it being used in there as well? Well, if we look at the top four capabilities that data engineers are using, it's data intelligence. It's data quality, mastering, transformation, metadata management. And their biggest challenge is tooling. But look at what else is at the top of the list. Data intelligence, governance, and availability. And honestly, with the exception of tooling, all of these are nearly equivalent in the number of organizations that are challenged by these issues. Now, every conversation I have with software vendors and technologies users these days includes AI. And data is the foundation of AI. So it's only fitting that we also discuss it in this webinar. In March of this year, an IDC survey told us that 61% of organizations worldwide are doing something with GenAI. March, 61%. We ran the same survey again in July. 78%. 4 months later, that's a significant jump. GenAI has really turned the push of AI. That's IT departments and vendors, software vendors pushing AI into the business, into a pull. The business is asking for AI capabilities. Now, I can also say that the areas of the business in which people that answered these surveys thought or believed that GenAI was going to have the most impact in the use cases that they thought had the most promise changed a lot in these 4 months. In other words, there's still a lot of flux going on. We're very early days, but those days are short and we're moving very fast. As we enter into this period of intelligent automation, our relationship with data is changing, and the top 3 challenges organizations are having with AI highlight that there's still a lot of work to do. Data availability and quality, tooling, and data trust are all holding organizations back from accelerating with confidence and lowering their risk. Now, I want to move back to the why. Why should we invest in data intelligence? Why should we take control of our data? It's obvious here, but let's take a look at it through the lens of qualitative and quantitative research. Last year, I did an IDC MarketScape. It's a market evaluation of data catalogs. And here's a summary of the drivers that I heard in 24 interviews with reference customers across multiple industries, including financial services, insurance, consumer goods, higher education, stock exchanges, and healthcare. Now, I'm not going to read through each of these because they echo what we've seen in survey data: quality, control, trust, and accountability. And here's a summary of the outcomes or successes that these organizations achieved as a result of implementing data catalogs to improve their intelligence about data. Now, let's take a look at the quantitative side of benefits. In the most recent data management survey that we did at IDC, we were able to score each respondent on a scale of how much they've operationalized data management functions, including data cataloging, and how far along the path they were to becoming a digital business. High scores were positively correlated with improvements in business, operational, and data management outcomes. On the financial metrics, those at the top of the scorecard saw a 8.4% improvement versus those at the bottom of the scorecard, 4.3% improvement. Above the average, share of market and profit margin, where we see even a bigger gap between the top and the bottom. Now, on operational metrics, 10.7% at the top of the scorecard, 6% at the bottom. Above the average, customer retention and satisfaction, innovation, regulatory compliance, employee retention, and operational risk improvements. I put out the customer metrics here so you can see these significant differences. Now, in data outcomes, more than a third at the top of the scorecard reported significant improvements in data outcomes. The most improved included data security, governance, and data worker productivity. But if we look at those who had a low level of operationalization of data intelligence, more specifically data catalogs, there's a significant difference between those that experienced data management improvements and those that did not. So you can see here the value of data intelligence. It validates the data control plane in business value terms. And with the permeant nature of data intelligence within the data control plane, we see the business value of data intelligence. Now, as we close, I'd like to give you a few things to take away with you, or at least when I close my portion, let me give you a few things to take away with you. Digital transformation is no longer the focus, but running a digital business is. As we enter this new era of intelligent automation, remember our relationship with data is changing, and that relationship is going to be defined by our knowledge of the data, which is informed by data intelligence. The modern data environment is in 3D, distributed, diverse, and dynamic. Notice I say the modern data environment, not the modern data stack. The modern data environment is what is real, because it includes all the new stuff, but it also includes the old stuff as well. We can't forget it's hybrid. It's not only cloud data warehouses, lakes, and lakehouses, but also includes operational and legacy data sources. Control the modern data environment with data intelligence, governance, and engineering to activate data in the modern enterprise. As data is leveraged in the delivery of insights and supported decisions, as those decisions are increasingly being automated, you better hope that the data being used can also be trusted. And lastly, deliver enterprise intelligence, providing the ability to synthesize information, deliver insights at scale, contribute to continuous learning, and help your organization build a data-driven business and culture. With that, I'd like to thank you for the time. If you need any additional information, you can reach out to me at idc.com, or you can follow me on these social media channels. With that, I'll turn it back to Cleo.
Thank you so much, Stewart. And there's already questions buzzing in the Q&A that we will address at the very end. But thank you for this really great introduction to the importance of data intelligence and some of the ways that people have seen the real impact on business value. I'm going to introduce Nick Duce next, who has worked with dozens of Alation customers and has been in the data intelligence world for a long time. He is going to talk about the Alation data maturity model and why and how we've created that. Over to you, Nick. Thank you.
Cleo, thank you very much. So what I would like to do is take you through the Alation data maturity model. As Cleo said, I've been working within the IT industry for the past 25 years and have been focusing on data for a great proportion of that. So why pursue data maturity? As Stewart has just said, the value of data intelligence is critical for organizational performance and goes hand in hand with some long-standing research dating back to 2014 by McKinsey. This highlights that companies using data effectively can gain real business value from it. The challenges that companies are facing now with data compared to when the report was first published are somewhat similar, only the scale of the data and the sheer volume of it have grown significantly. Companies are still trying to organize their data so that it can be used by the business. But with the scale, people within the business need to be able to understand what they are looking at and for. This is why we have developed the Alation Data Intelligence Maturity Model, in order to help companies identify strengths and weaknesses within their data programs. We recognize that we need to put together a model when customers were asking us how they could do even more with the catalog. This maturity model is not intended to be an exhaustive engagement with a consulting firm, but more a work of discovery to understand where you are now and to decide where you want to be in the future. It can feed into the creation of your data strategy, helping to define the areas of weakness that need attention first. It can be used to prioritize efforts and focus on the things that really matter to business and to create a competitive advantage. Our model is based on years of experience with hundreds of customers who have been on their data journey and are still looking to grow with it. Whilst we are Alation, we recognize that it takes more than a data catalog to deliver a successful data program. So our model looks beyond the data catalog and towards the platforms, organizations, and people that will use them. The maturity model is built of 4 tenets that we believe help deliver a strong data platform and culture, with the most critical ingredients in each of these tenets made available for inspection as topics within the model. It is a statement-driven approach that will allow you to navigate the topics individually with context. We've also included statements on what we think can be done to help deliver the change for your organization. The goal of the data maturity model is to give you an indicative picture of your maturity level and provide you with the actions that can be fed into your data program. This will lead to enabling people within your organization with data to use it more consistently and fluently. Whilst we're here, let's take a closer look at each of the tenets. Being able to find and understand data is a critical process in helping an organization gain value from data. If business users cannot find or access data, then the ability to use it is stymied. This tenet outlines the critical elements that we believe assist in and help develop a strong environment for data search and discovery. Leadership is the often brushed over or dismissed tenet of data maturity. Many times, organizations will implement software or data with the thought that the process of implementation and making the tools available will fix the problem. Data investments need more than just making them available in order for them to be truly successful. They need thoughtful and purposeful engagement with the business in order to deliver the expected value and results. Without change management program, without sponsorship, without training and communication, the most likely outcome is a lack of adoption and value not being realized. If you actively work to improve data literacy, you will develop more users of the data that can first understand it, and second, use it to make decisions. You may not want to refer to these core components as a data literacy program, but more as an enabler to help people find the answers to their questions. Data literacy spans more than the data and analytics organization. It should be seen as a company-wide objective. However, the tenets within our model are directed at the DNA team. These are the core tactics that you can use in order to foster that culture within your organization to help enable the end users of the data to truly grasp what is in front of them. There are standalone data governance maturity models that go into far greater detail on governance than the Alation data maturity model. What we have outlined here is a subset of many topics that could be covered in a DG model, but we believe are the foundations of a strong start in running a DG program. The topics center around the creation of a framework that everyone within the organization can follow, that they can adhere to by creating and applying policies to data assets, and most critically, documenting those assets so the relevant metadata is held for the data sets that need to be governed. You must also ensure that you are keeping track of what is happening with the governance arena, and ensure that metadata is kept up to date and relevant. Here is a representation of the axis used to understand the scores for our model. Each topic is measured by a score being assigned to each of the statements that are selected for each driver, which are then aggregated and divided by the number of topics that give us the score for each section. Levels are assigned based on the statements selected for each of the topics. Once a statement is selected, the score is assigned. The scale starts with foundational for those topics that are in the very early stages, working its way up to optimized, where the process for that topic is deeply embedded within the organization. Scores will differ across organizations. They will likely even differ between departments within an organization. This is quite normal, but unless you have the evidence to support it, asking the business for funding in order to solve the problem will be incredibly difficult. We've noticed through our work with hundreds of organizations that there are industries that tend to have a particular approach to data, which sees their data maturity scores weighted in a particular direction. For example, in heavily regulated environments such as finance or healthcare, you will often find that there are strong leadership and governance scores, which ensures that the business does not fall foul of regulations, but less attention has perhaps been given to finding the data or having people that are outside of core teams being data literate. Conversely, you will likely find in more agile environments where competition drives the habits of the organization that they have a good handle on data discovery and a higher degree of data literacy. But because governance is not driven by regulation and leadership is not needed as much to drive data use, they will tend to score more lowly in those areas. This means that even with the seemingly mature organizations, there are still improvements that can be made that will provide further value from the data that they hold. Having a model that can be referred to is something that our customers have been asking for a while. Understanding how to move the program on, how to get to the next stage of maturity in order to get the most out of their investments. Ultimately, the aim of the model is to enable you to take stock of where you are on your data journey, to be able to put a stake in the ground to say, this is where we are. But not only that, to look forward, to show the rest of the organization where you want to be. You will have the opportunity to map out your progress, discuss with the business what is most important, what needs to be prioritized, and what is the one thing that will help move the business forward. It will also give you the content needed to communicate this with your business and the teams that will be coming on the journey with you. Looking back to the model, without the communication and buy-in of the organization, any data program will struggle. Use this as an opportunity to springboard your program. We've run this data maturity model with customers, and they have a path forward from the initial conversations. They have a plan for what they will be doing next on their journey, and we have one of those customers here to speak to you today. And with that, I'll hand it back to Cleo.
Thank you so much, Nick. I'm very excited about this. I'm getting a lot of questions about whether the slides will be shared. So the recording will be shared, and we'll also share a white paper that has the details of this model. So you can take it and use it with your teams. But with us, Jade Jones, who leads the metadata and data quality teams at Sainsbury's. She has been driving change at Sainsbury's quite effectively for some time. If her name, Jade Jones, sounds like a star, it's because she is. First, while Sainsbury's is a household name, I think some of us, and I have to say I put myself in that, haven't quite realized the magnitude of this company and also the magnitude of its data landscape. So maybe can you first give us a little bit of an overview about Sainsbury itself, and then we'll dive into a more detailed question about your work there.
Of course, yeah. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. So yeah, those of you based in the UK will hopefully be aware of one of the oldest retailers in Britain. But as Cleo said, for those of you joining globally, I'll introduce you very briefly to us. So Sainsbury's started out actually in 1869 as a retailer of fresh foods, and we later expanded out into packaged groceries. John James Sainsbury's ethos was simple: quality perfect, prices lower. And while Sainsbury's started out as a grocer, over the years, our ambitions expanded, and Sainsbury's Group is now one of the UK's leading retailers across food, clothing, general merchandise, and financial services. So as a group, everything that we do is underpinned by our 5 strategic priorities, which all converge to create our singular purpose. So that's serving every single one of our customers, driven by our passion for food. So I just wanted to touch on a few of these just to give you a real flavour of Sainsbury's before I get into the meat of our data challenges. So starting at winning in food, which sits firmly at the heart of our priorities. So putting great value and great quality food back into the heart of Sainsbury's. So our heritage is fully founded in delivering great products and offering our customers delicious and innovative food wherever and however they want to shop with us. Hopefully you might be aware of some of our brands as a group, our strong brands. That's Argos, Habitat, Tu, Nectar and Sainsbury's Bank. All have a role in delivering for our customers. So it's absolutely paramount that we ensure each and every brand is profitable in its own right to drive growth and support our ambition in food. Although data, of course, plays a crucial part in all of our priorities, safe to invest is an area where the value of our data in simplifying our business and lowering our costs really gets a central spotlight. So cutting complexity to make decisions quicker and prioritize what matters most to our customers really is the name of the game. So I just wanted to move on to talk a little bit about our data landscape. So whilst food is clearly what keeps Sainsbury's live and kicking, thankfully, data is in our blood and our heritage. And Sainsbury's was actually the first retailer to digitize the distribution of goods to its stores in 1961. But today, Sainsbury's is on a mission to democratize our huge stores of internal data to create accessibility around our business and customer insights, shifting the paradigm away from insights being the preserve of the special few who can code towards putting it in the palm of every single colleague. In terms of my role, looking after the metadata and data quality functions, my fantastic team and I are accountable for putting the guidelines and the processes in place to build a real map of our trusted data. And our roadmap looks to plot that map further and further out until it covers as much of our data as is feasible, ideally all of it. As a large organization, our tech and data landscape is very wide, it's very varied, but I wanted to share with you some of the pillars of our data ecosystem on this slide. But going forward, I look forward to talking to you about the data challenges that a large multi-channel, multi-brand organization faces and how our data maturity really does underpin our strategic initiatives. So Cleo, back to you.
Thank you. This is always very impressive to me. Again, like as I've learned the breadth of what you do. Can you thinking a little bit about the 4 pillars of the Alation data maturity model and your journey with Sainsbury's? How has Sainsbury been growing around those?
Yeah, so data search and discovery has always been an area to which we've invested a lot of time and resource. It was part of that initial key use case and problem statement for our data management journey. So it was really, really key for us to spend a lot of time building the foundations, a roadmap for that area. Good curation and stewardship principles are at the heart of our governance framework. And personally, I believe you can only go so far with data maturity if you don't have an understanding of what ownership is and the responsibilities of those owners completely locked down. Pulling that valuable knowledge out of experts' heads and making it available for all to consume from has created a lot of growth for us organically. Building your data strategy on the importance of self-serve, that really demands making trusted, well-curated data available quickly. And that democratization of SME knowledge can only empower others on that journey. So that was really key for us to start with. For data fluency and literacy, whilst we haven't neglected it thus far, it's definitely something we're looking to bring back to the core of our roadmap over the next 12 to 18 months. The more literate our stakeholders are to the value of our data, the easier our job is and my job is. The name of the game for us is certainly to make governance a much more community-focused function. We need all hands on deck to embed good practice throughout the organization. We absolutely cannot do that as a singular centralized function. So that's probably our focus going forward. From a leadership perspective, we've been incredibly fortunate at Sainsbury's to always have fantastic sponsorship for our governance initiatives at the senior level. We were very early adopters of Alation, at least in the UK, and that was thanks to the incredible work done by everyone involved in documenting the potential business value and contextualizing governance in the contribution to a focus on business outcomes.
No, that's great. Definitely have really enjoyed the partnership. I hear that you've used recently the data intelligence maturity model to see where you are and where you want to go. How do you see the use of the model itself, and how does that help you express those priorities that you just kind of mentioned, I think?
Yeah, so in terms of what we used it for at the moment, we've been on such a growth journey over the past 4 to 5 years with respect to data transformation. So it was initially just a really great chance for us to take a step back and think about how far we'd progressed against our North Star. So it was a fantastic base point to look at how effectively we were utilizing our data assets. After benchmarking out what our starting point looked like, although that was 4 to 5 years in, across those dimensions, our next steps to move forward to that next stage of maturity really became clear, tangible, and most importantly, measurable. So the iterative approach of having a model we can keep referring to is something that we can continue to use for the future across many different data transformation programs, and as our composition as a company and our strategic priorities evolve further and further. Sainsbury's has a lot of data, as you can imagine. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But how far we are leveraging the full potential of that data that we capture to make those data-driven decisions, that's really what the data maturity model and our ongoing plans with the remediation with that will answer. But above all, from a prioritization perspective, what the model really gave us was objectivity. That objective assessment of development areas and priorities without external influence. So it can be so easy to get stuck in the weeds when developing out governance initiatives. Whilst I absolutely believe that getting a few quick wins under the belt early on helps to deliver the value needed to convince on value, it's those longer term strategic projects highlighted by the maturity model that will really affect change, and how you prioritize those can be driven by the maturity model.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to ask one Alation question. That's it for the rest of the time.
Of course.
So we partner very closely. Can you talk a little bit about how you think of Alation as part of your data intelligence maturity journey?
Yeah, we've been in partnership with Alation for about 5 years now. And the way we have positioned and developed the data catalog in that time has shifted and pivoted a few times, depending on the priorities of the company. But that's actually the beauty of having a product that is actually yours to customize to your bespoke requirements. You can change that as you grow. Our focus over the last few years has really been to support our consumers, again, to be empowered to make those informed decisions about the data they choose to use. And having completed that maturity assessment with Nick, it feels the best way that we can achieve and expand along that path is to focus on our data literacy and fluency, as I mentioned. And for us, Alation is absolutely pivotal to that piece, really the central capability that will support that. The ability to combine and govern, align our communal knowledge, which is particularly important, again, in that multi-channel, multi-brand kind of organization like ours, and present that in context alongside the wealth of data that we own, it's invaluable for all the functions to be able to communicate and deliver collaboratively.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I'm excited to hear it. We are always very happy with partnering with Sainsbury's. So I'm going to bring back Stewart and Nick, and I think we'll ask some questions because I'm seeing so many questions. So I want to make sure we have time to address some of the questions. So I'll ask some of the questions to all of you. So first, how do you think of the role of leadership and teams and technology interacting in driving data intelligence programs? There was two questions that I got, I think, privately that were about leadership versus culture, but maybe if you could add, talk about like leadership, teams, and technology interacting and driving data intelligence. Maybe Stewart, I'll turn to you first.
Sure, thanks, Cleo. So I can say that during the reference interviews that I did for the IDC MarketScape last year on data catalogs, the biggest barrier to success was and is adoption, getting people to use the technology. And that's a culture issue. And it's where strong data leadership can really help foster that data culture and encourage adoption. It's where I heard some really innovative solutions to the problem, including actually putting it onto your employee evaluation. It was part of your personal business commitments to use the catalog. People were being measured on that. But there was gamification, lots of different ways people were trying to encourage the use of the catalog. Because honestly, the more you put into data intelligence, the more you get out of it. And a big part of that, the connection with the technology, is obviously it needs to have a great user experience. You need to be able to lower the barriers to adoption through that aspect as well. So those things really go together for me when I look at them and when I talk to customers that are using them.
Jane, I'll turn the same question over to you if you have your perspective of this.
Yeah, clear leadership is absolutely crucial to driving everything to do with transformation for digital and data. I think leaders are the key actors in setting that vision, articulating the strategy, and inspiring, more importantly, to embrace and affect change. Culture is equally as important. And I think you mentioned there was a question in the chat around leadership and culture and are they synonymous? But I think culture is equally as important. Our culture must encourage innovation. We at Sainsbury's term it fast failure. We iterate, we learn, we try again. The decisions we make as an organization about the composition of our tech stack can really dictate that pace of delivery and change and advancement. So important to regularly review that against strategy. But at the core of any transformation program is the people. And for us, pushing forward the data program is everyone's responsibility at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Nick, do you want to add? Do you have anything to add to this?
I would agree with both Jade and Stuart. I think the only additional comment that I could perhaps add here is that there have been a history and catalogue of IT projects inside of organizations that have been delivered over years, with change management being sort of a core principle of the delivery of those projects. An ERP rollout or the rollout of Slack or Teams, for example, inside of organizations. And a lot of care and attention is paid to help the organization understand why that change is being made. And I think sometimes data doesn't get the same level of attention for the end users that perhaps those more integrated systems do in the organization. And I think with sort of the leadership and looking at data literacy and sort of all of the things that we've spoken about in the data maturity model, that can really help to engender and grow the use of data in an organization.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you. Let me just go to, there's a question about definition. So I'll just throw that one to Stewart, I think. Would you talk about the difference between enterprise intelligence strategy versus data strategy? This one of the first questions we got.
Yeah, I think that one came in from Anna. Thank you, Anna, for that question. And I realized I used it in my talk without really defining it. Enterprise intelligence is a larger order strategy. It's a model that we have at IDC where we define that it includes the ability to synthesize information, so to pull all kinds of different information together, both structured, unstructured data, knowledge, pulling all that together, the ability to deliver insights at scale at all different levels throughout the organization. and the ability to support collective and continuous learning, and lastly, to help build a data culture. Data is the common thread that runs through each one of those pillars or each one of those capabilities in enterprise intelligence. So a data strategy should really support that higher order enterprise intelligence. So, related to the question that you just gave us, Cleo, right? It's not just about the data. It's not just about the technology. It's about the people. Leadership matters. All that is wrapped into what we call enterprise intelligence. But that's the difference between those two different things. Hopefully that answers your question, Anna.
Thank you so much for this. At least like it's much clearer for me. There was another quick, also probably yes or no answer for you, Stewart. So I'll just go to this one and then we'll go back to the panel. Said that where the responders were able to directly tie improvement in financial results to BI. I think that's a question we get a lot, and I don't know if you have that about the data that you showed.
So the answer is no. Now let me explain how we did the correlation ourselves. So we did ask the respondents what were the top 3 business and operational metrics they used to measure how well they were doing. And then we asked how much those metrics have changed over the last 2 years. Then we also scored each of the respondent on a scale of how much they've operationalized 5 different data management functions and how far along the path they were to becoming a digital business. And those organizations that had operationalized the most of the data management functions and were furthest along the path, we put them at the top of the scorecard. And we found a natural correlation between those at the top of the scorecard for maturity in data management and the fact that those organizations were also the ones that were seeing the greatest improvement in their KPIs. So we did that correlation. We did not ask the respondents to try to make that correlation themselves.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you so much.
Natural discovery.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the question about value and how we're going to create that correct correlation is always a really big one. Going back a little bit to like the meat of our topic and value and data maturity, maybe to Jade, how do you see the data maturity model helping you to show value, and how have you so far demonstrated the value of data programs or data literacy or data intelligence programs?
Yeah, we've really chosen to focus on the problem statements after our initial run through of the maturity model. Yes, these are our development areas and these are our strengths, but what are the tangible symptoms of those respectively? From there, I think you can really start to evidence growth, and from this increased value return from each data asset in its own right. I don't think you can ever score full marks on a data maturity assessment. There will always be room for improvement, but I do think the blueprint will give you the closest you can get to an objective measure on your ability and culture as an organization to monetize value from your data assets. That you need to continually ask yourself, how will you create and measure value from your data, and what are the symptoms of success? What are the symptoms of change? Working backward from a desired outcome through the model can help to show value early on, I think.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. There is a question about oh wait, sorry, I lost it. There was a question about the value of data intelligence and GenAI, and I think, Stewart, as we were talking before this, you said there's always this question now these days. And I think, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I lost this thing, but
yeah, I saw the question. What do you think the correlation is between effective
there you
data
go.
intelligence, data governance, and success of AI initiatives?
Mhm.
Yeah. So there's a significant correlation, right? We talked about, I mean, data is what AI is built on, right? Models are built by training them with data. So at IDC, we've actually created a model to describe the path to getting value out of AI, not just Gen AI, but all AI. And it all starts with a responsible AI policy. Interestingly, we've also measured that only a third of organizations have implemented responsible use of data for AI and ML. That's a problem. If we've only got a third of organizations have responsible data usage policies for AI ML, right? And data intelligence is going to be critical to figuring out what the responsible use of data is in AI ML, because it provides the definition, provides the context to make sure the right data is being used for the right reason to train the model. And even when we talk about GenAI, it's not about training the model on data. It's more about taking data and feeding that data into the model using prompt engineering and embeddings. You've got to make sure you're using the right data in the right context to ask those questions of the large language models. And so, if you don't have that intelligence, that contextual intelligence about that data, you might be using the wrong data, getting completely incorrect answers. We know there's hallucinations in Gen AI. That's going to continue until we get the prompt engineering correct and we start to narrow down some of the scope. But I think, without responsible use of data, you can't have responsible use of AI. So and to get that responsible use of data, again, you need that intelligence about the data.
Yeah, it's an exciting time for data. The criticality has only increased for sure.
Yes.
For everybody on this call that's listening and engaged in this field. It is a very exciting time. I do want to make sure that I ask my favorite question as the last question here, which is, what is one piece of advice you would give to someone who's at the start of the journey of leading a data intelligence maturity program? And I'll let Jade have the final word. So I'll start with Nick and then I'll go to Stewart.
So I think going back to the data intelligence maturity model, take stock of where you are. Take a step back, understand the position that you're currently in order to be able to make a plan for where you want to go. One of the things that we've tried to do with customers is plan for success. Do that. Plan for success. And I would also probably put aside some budget for change management, for training, for those things that can actually help deliver the change within the organization.
Thank you. Stewart, I know you see lots and lots of companies. What would be your words of advice to someone that's starting that journey?
So interestingly enough, even though a lot of the survey data that I showed today shows the importance of intelligence about data and some initiatives to improve the intelligence about data, metadata management and data cataloging technologies are always at the bottom of the list when it comes to budgeting priorities and where IT departments are focusing their efforts and where data departments are focusing their efforts. And there's just a huge disconnect there for me. So I think you've got, again, as to what Nick said, you've got to figure out where you are, where you want to go, and what you need to get there. And I kind of alluded to this earlier, there's so much focus on let's get everything into a cloud data warehouse or a cloud data lake, and then we'll figure out what we can do with it. I would say, why don't you focus first on making sure you understand where your data is, what it means, how it's being used, who's using it, when it's being used, and match that intelligence up with whatever business problem you're trying to solve. And then you can make the decision, do you need to move that data move it somewhere else, right? And so I will come back to that. Take stock where you are, where you want to go, but also focus in on what intelligence do you have about the data in your organization today.
Oh, great point, Stewart. Thank you. Music to my ears. Jade, last words. If someone were in your shoes 3 years ago, what would you tell them?
Yeah, what would I tell myself back then? I think there's a couple of activities that should absolutely take place from day one. Link data governance to your strategic initiatives from day one. So they are partnered and they grow together as an organization. Most organizations will want to do some combination of grow revenue, reduce costs, digitize, etc. But all of those aspirations require good quality data to achieve them. Can't do it without it. So that's really key. Additionally, I would find those clear existing problem statements, as I mentioned earlier, those tangible issues that cannot sensibly be ignored. Poorly managed data can have absolutely huge financial impacts. Shouting about those from the rooftops gets people on side surprisingly quickly. So you've got to find those champions early and keep them on side. Finally, stay curious, I think, stay agile. You can plan as far as you want into the long term, but you need to be adaptable. Things change every single day in an organization, in a budget, in an industry, and within data about what's acceptable. So you just need to be agile about what your priorities are, I think.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jade. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for the panelists for sharing your insights. Really wonderful conversation. Thank you, everybody, for attending. If you want to continue this discussion, we're going to have 3 of our annual user conferences in London, Chicago, and Sydney, and you can join us. Jade will be at the one in London, hopefully, to speak more. And we will be sending the recording of this, and you can also find the white paper that details our data intelligence maturity model on our website. And happy to continue to follow up. Thank you all. Thank you very much.